Hello everyone and welcome to Chess5, and today I'm going to show you the game between Anish Giri versus Maxime, and this game is from the Grand Chess 2 Superbet Chess Classic Romania 2021, and this is round number 7. And before I start the game, I'm having a small request for all of you, that it's been 1 year, since 1 year that I've started this YouTube channel Chess5, and from all of your contribution I have successfully reached 280 subscribers within 1 year. But I'm having a mission that till the end of July, my requirement is to reach 1000 subscribers if possible. So please help me by reaching 1000 subscribers till the end of July. And I'm telling you this from India. Yep, and currently in India, today is 14 June 2021. So it's like one month is left. So please share this video with your friends and family members. So yeah, let's continue the game. So as you all of you know that Anish Giri and Maxime, both players are very strong players. So this game is obviously going to be a very interesting game. So let's see what happened in the game. So Anish Giri with the white pieces started with one knight f3, the ready opening, and Maxime replied with knight to f6. Here's c4, here's c5, knight to c3, and d5. Already trying to open up the center by playing d5. Here c into d5, knight into d5, and now d4. And Anish Giri is going for the same, trying to open up the center. So Maxime took the knight on c3, b into c3, and here g6. And like somewhat like it's a Grunfeld defense, because in Grunfeld defense the knight gets exchanged and there's a pawn on c3, and black plays g6 followed by bishop g7, c5, castle, and put pressure on the center. Yeah, so it's very nice opening for black. And if white is not fully prepared with the white pieces, he will just get smashed away. But okay, as we know, both the players are very strong, so obviously they are very well prepared. So after g6, black is planning to play bishop g7. So after g6, Anish Giri played e3. Here usually in Grunfeld defense, white plays e4. But okay, e3, bishop to g7, bishop to b5 check, bishop to d7. Here bishop comes back to d3. Here castle, castle, and queen to a5. And the idea of playing queen to a5 is, now the queen is attacking the pawn on c3, and also queen is getting developed on a very nice square. So here queen to b3, protecting the pawn on c3, as well as also attacking the pawn on b7. So black played queen to c7 back, protecting the pawn on b7. Here rook comes to b1, attacking the b7 pawn with the double attack with the queen as well as the rook. So black played b6. Here bishop comes to a3. Here knight to c6. Here d into c5. And here bishop to e6. Okay, taking the pawn was a fine move, but at the place of taking the pawn, it's actually white can simply play h3, because white is having a very nice pawn structure. But in the game, Anish Giri took, and we can clearly see that okay, white now the c3 pawn of white is a little bit creepy, but it's okay. After white takes the pawn, black takes it back, and bishop will take the pawn, and white would be a pawn up. That's why after dc5, black played bishop to e6, attacking the queen. If black would have captured the pawn, then white will simply capture the pawn with the bishop, and the plan of the bishop is to play bishop to d4, trade the key bishop of black on g7, and then the white pawn structure would be very nice, and white is just a pawn up and having a very nice position. That's why after dc5, black decided to play bishop e6, attacking the queen on b3. So white played here c into b6. White is saying, okay, you can grab my queen, I'm going to grab your queen. So black played a into b6. Here black have opened his rook on a8 successfully. Here white played queen into b6, saying okay, you can capture my queen, I will capture your queen, and then you can capture my bishop and I will capture your knight. So this is what happened in the game. Queen takes, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes, and here bishop to d5, attacking the rook on c6. So white played rook to c5. Here comes bishop into f3, g into f3, and we can see that okay, white pawn structure is a little bit off, and it's an opposite color bishop. So in the end game, the draw chances increases, but that's the fun. So after g into f3, black played bishop into c3, capturing a pawn, and here comes bishop to c4. Bishop goes to b4, attacking the rook on c5. So here comes rook to b5, bishop to d6, rook to c1, activating his last piece into the game. Here comes rook to a8, double attack on the pawn on a2. But here comes f4. The idea of playing f4 is, okay, first of all, there is a way of the king to come on the center. In the end game, if the king activates, it's better for the side who is activating the king. And the second purpose of playing f4 is it takes the square of the bishop, because now the pawn on f4 controls the dark squares. So it's like the bishop on d6 is like a little bit passive now. So after f4, black played king to g7, trying to activate his king. Here bishop comes to b3, rook comes to a5, saying okay, do you want to trade rooks? Anish Giri said no. Here takes, and here h6, keeping the pawns on the dark squares, because white is having a light square bishop, so it's preferable for any side to keep the pawns on the opposite color of the bishop. So Anish Giri played h3, doing the same. Here comes g5, here f into g5, h into g5, and here bishop to b3. Here comes rook to a5, a4, here rook to c5, saying do you want to trade the rooks? Anish Giri denied the rook trade, because if we trade the rooks, okay, all the white is a pawn up, but okay, it's an opposite color bishop, so it's a very high chances to end the game in a draw. That's why after rook to c5, Anish decided to play rook to b1. Here comes king to f6, king to g2, bishop to c7, so that white cannot push his pawn for now, because the bishop and the rook is covering the a5 square. So white plays bishop to d1, rook to d5, rook to c1, attacking the bishop. Here comes bishop to d6, bishop to e2, rook to c5, asking for a rook trade. Anish Giri denied the rook trade, and here comes rook to c3. The idea of black is to play rook to a3 and trade the rook off the game. So white pushes the pawn to a5. At the place of playing rook to c3, black could have played bishop to c7, and the idea of playing bishop to c7 is now the black is chopping the pawn of a4 to advance it on f5, and black will simply put the bishop on a5 and move the rook here and there, and I think it's a fine position for black. But okay, in the game after rook a1, rook c3 was played. Here white pushes the pawn to a5, here rook to a3, rook into a3, bishop into a3. Here comes king to f3, trying to bring the king in the center and perhaps here, and try to push the pawn. So black pushes the pawn to e6, trying to make a square for the king to go to e7. So white plays bishop to d3, king to e7, king to g4, and in this position Maxime played king to f6 back. At the place of king to b6, he should have played f6. This is much nice. At the place of playing king to f6, the idea is now white plays f4. The idea is if black takes, then white will take the pawn back, and white is having a pass pawn on h5, so it's very better for white. So black plays here bishop to bishop to c1, attacking the pawn on e3. So white plays king to f3 back to protect the pawn on e3, because white can't push the pawn, because white will simply lose the pawn on f4. So king f3 is forced. Here black will play king to d7, here h6, here king to c7. Here white plays e4, saying okay, you can grab my f4 pawn, I'm going to give it. And okay, grabbing the pawn is not right, because if you capture the pawn with the bishop, now white will play h4, a very strong move by white, because here first of all the pawn cannot take the pawn because the bishop is hanging on f4, and the idea of white is to not capture the pawn but to push the pawn and to make a queen, and it would be a winning position for white. So bishop into f4 is not working. If black plays g into f4, this is also not working, because at the place of h4 this is also winning, but a better move would be to play king to g4. The idea is here the king cannot come because white is going to make a queen. The king have to stay over there, and the idea of white is to simply play king to h5, king to g6, and grab these pawns, and going to push his h pawn and e pawn, and going to win the game. So g pawn, g takes f4 is also not working. So the best move in this position is to play e5, a very strong move by black. And here white plays f5. The idea of white is to play king to g4, king to h5, king to g6, and capture these pawns and make a queen. But here black plays bishop to a3, king to g4, and here bishop to c5, a very nice move by black to cover the a7 square. Here comes king to h5, king to d6, king to g6, and king to e7. And in this position black is on time to protect his f6 pawn, and this game is like an equal and going to be draw, because the black will simply move his bishop from d4 to c5 and just repeat the moves. White can't make any progress in this position. So this could have been played by Maxime, but after king g4 he decided to play king to f6, repeat the move. And here white played a6, pushing the pawn. Here bishop to c5, a fourth move, because the bishop can only come to c5 to cover the a7 square. Here white plays bishop to b5, a very nice move. You're going to see a very clever idea by Anish Giri. So after bishop to b5, black played bishop to a7, and now Anish Giri played bishop to e8, a very fantastic move by Anish Giri, a very nice plan. Because here black played king e7, and here it's your chance. Free feel to pause the video and try to find the best move for white in this position. Okay, so for those who have found the right move, congratulations on finding the only winning move, which is bishop into f7, which is a very brilliant move by Anish Giri. And this move was played in the game, because here king into f7 is forced, and white will simply capture the pawn on g5. And here the bishop, first of all, what's happening, let's check. So white is having 3 pawns on the king side, and black is having a single pawn on the king side. And if I talk about the queen side, the white pawn on a6 is a very strong pawn, so bishop can't go anywhere. The bishop have to be in this diagonal to cover the a7 square. So we can say the bishop is locked by the a6 pawn, and white is just simply going to push the pawn, or perhaps just going to bring the king over here and push the pawn. I'm going to win the game. So after king into g5, Maxime still played some moves. Here king g7, h4, here e5, king to f5, bishop to b8, protecting the pawn on e5, and white simply played king e4. And in this position, after number 50, Maxime with the black pieces resigned the game, and Anish Giri with the white pieces won the game. A very fantastic game by both the players, and there was a very small mistake, and Anish Giri took the game off. Like, both the players did no blunders, actually, no blunders. It was just like a small inaccuracy by Maxime, and Anish Giri took the game. Like, in the many of you were thinking like, why Maxime resigned in this position? He can still play. But actually nothing is going to happen, because after king to h6, the idea of white is very simple. White is going to put his king to b7, and the bishop have to move from the b8. He can't go to a7 because white will simply capture the bishop. So you have to move from this diagonal, and then white will simply push the pawn and make a queen and going to win a game. So that's why after move number 50, king e4, Maxime with the black piece resigned the game. So guys, if you like this game, then please like to my video. If you are new to my channel, then please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.